Lions Nation, welcome back to another edition of Believe in Lions. It's brought to you by FanDuel. I'm Trevor Thompson. Glad to be along with you once again, and glad to have with you a longtime friend of mine, Matt Dery, who is the host of Locked On Lions, a daily podcast here in town. And Matt, I'll never forget, it was a year ago. My 1 year anniversary at Believe just came up, and you were the very first guy in town to welcome me aboard, to have me on to talk Lions and promote our show. I really do appreciate that, but certainly a lot has changed for both of us in the last year, and certainly a lot has changed for the Lions when we look back. Just looking forward right now as the draft comes up, what are the biggest things on your mind that you think have really changed over the last year with this team and the direction that they're headed right now as we get things started this week?
First off, Trev, great to see you. And look, all of us that do all of these shows, whether it's the two of us, whether it's Jeremy and Eric and the crew at Pride of Detroit, obviously Justin Rogers and the Lions Collective podcast with Colton and that crew, we're all should be on the same team and promoting each other. Everybody wants Lions content, and there are multiple places to get it. So to have you on and you having me on, of course, anytime. It's been a wild year. Like you said, when we were on a year ago, it was, all right, this team won 15 games. Maybe they won't win as many next year, but hey, let's get further than the first round of the playoffs and the divisional round when they lost to the Commanders. And last year was a surprise to a lot of people in just how it went, how sloppy they were just from the get-go. The opening kick in the Hall of Fame game. And they
right.
They got a linebacker returning kicks and he fumbles. And I remember Colin Cowherd nationally said, man, the Lions look sloppy. And I'm like, I said on Locked On Lions, I said, come on now, we're nitpicking a Hall of Fame game in July, but it kind of set the tone for the rest of the year. There just was something wrong last year. And certainly John Morton was a problem. They've rectified that. Defensively, to lose Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, all these things that took place. And yet they still won more games than they lost. And now in this kind of reset this year, as Dan Campbell has said, I think they're going to be okay. I still think with all of the talent that they have, especially the core young talent, the Hutchinsons and the Gibbses and St. Browns, I think they're going to be Sewell. They're going to be okay. I do. But was free agency a little bit of a dud? Sure. But it was a dud. They're talking about the same it's a dud in Green Bay. They're talking about the same thing to an extent in Chicago. So let's see where this draft holds and goes. But I think there were some changes that needed to be made and were. I like the offensive coordinator. I love that Mike Kafka's on the staff, and I think that they'll bounce back. The question is, with a fourth place schedule, how crisp will they be, and can they stay healthy defensively?
I'm a big believer in continuity in order to get your program going, everybody being on the same page, guys knowing the role, developing chemistry. And in that regard, you talk about John Morton. Dan Campbell had to take over the play calling midseason. Then he goes and hires Drew Petzing. How do you see that role working with the offense, especially when you lose a guy like David Montgomery and going forward, how that might all shake out? Isaiah Pacheco comes into town. They're going to have to get used to one another in the backfield. Their O-line is certainly a line in transition. Like I said, I'm a big believer in continuity, and I'm just wondering, without that going forward, do you see them taking a step forward, a step back, remaining neutral? How do you see things going forward in that regard?
I think the offensive coordinator, position is important. Don't get me wrong, but Cade Mays at center is going to set the tone. And John Morton did not do a good job. So much so that his own friend, all right, the guy that brought him back, Dan Campbell, had to basically remove him from any decision making. And I know they played it off nicely and everything else, but of course the day after the season was over, Morton was gone. That throws a monkey wrench into everything. But let's start with up front, Trev, and just Cade Mays at center, replacing basically Frank Ragnow. Ragnow, last year's replacement, didn't work out. The Graham Glasgow experiment was a disaster. The other guys that tried to play center when Glasgow was hurt didn't work, and they thought maybe it was going to be Ratledge. It didn't work. So to go get Mays, give him 3 years. And look, he's no Pro Bowler and he's no Ragnow, but he's an upgrade from Glasgow and the group from last year that all hiked the football to Jared Goff. And it starts there. If Mays sucks, I don't care if you've got Vince Lombardi calling the plays or Don Coryell or Ben Johnson from 3 years ago. It doesn't matter. You've got to win up front. And I think this team is addressing the offensive line. I think they're going to at 17 in this draft. And so, yes, Petzing loves to run the ball, play action, 3 tight ends. That's great. But they've got to clean up that offensive line so that Jared Goff has the time so he can do all the play action and they can get creative offensively. But yes, I did like the Petzing hire, but I think that Mays signing was so key to everything.
This team for the last couple of years has been one of the odds-on favorites to get to the Super Bowl, but I just want to run through some names for you and just talk about a team in flux, a team in transition right now. And you go back to 2 years, you talk about Frank Ragnow's gone, Kevin Zeitler's gone, Taylor Decker, David Montgomery, Dan Skipper, Alex Anzalone, Graham Glasgow, Khalif Raymond, Al-Quadin Muhammad, who I thought had a decent season last year, Amik Robertson, Kyle Allen, just to name a few. The backup quarterback spot is a spot I think is valuable. So what you're going to do there, if you bring in a Teddy Bridgewater, I'm still not sure that that's the answer. But all those names, all that transition in key spots, guys that were familiar with one another and really helped build the core and build this thing up to what it became. With all those guys and all those positions, all going to be new faces going forward. How do you see them building the type of continuity necessary to, again, be a favorite for the Super Bowl to win the NFC?
Two things. Number one, the Lions' identity when they were really rocking 2 years ago and won 15 games and had the NFC, home field advantage in the playoffs. The identity was there. It was a toughness. You had enough veteran players. You got to have some vets on the team. You can have a very young team, and I know Green Bay is extremely young and they win, but there's still veteran players on that roster. Identity. Losing David Montgomery really, really hurts. It does. Mm-hmm. You have downgraded with Isaiah Pacheco, and I like Pacheco. If he's healthy, great.
Yeah. I like the old David Pacheco prior to breaking his leg. I like that guy. Right. He was a fantasy stud.
Yeah, 2023 Pacheco, please. But 24 and 25, you're right. He was not the same guy. You have right now. Look, they're going to move Sewell to the left side, but let's just say Sewell's still at right tackle today, which when you and I are recording, he is. You've downgraded from Decker to Larry Borum at the moment. Again, they could draft Caden Proctor. They could draft Freeling. They could draft any of these guys and put them there, and it would be fine. But Decker and Montgomery, Anzalone, these were veterans that were beloved in that room, helped with the identity of the toughness. Decker's playing through a busted shoulder every single week. Montgomery carrying tacklers and playing tough. Anzalone a couple of years ago was playing through injuries. These are tough guys that fit the identity. So and they're veterans. And you're going to miss that. I don't know who's replacing Anzalone at the moment. I don't know who's replacing Decker. And they've downgraded from Montgomery to Pacheco. That's a worry. But number two, what I love that Dan Campbell said at the league meetings a couple weeks ago, he's expecting a guy like Jack Campbell and a guy like Penei Sewell to really step it up in terms of leadership and take over for where those veterans left off in terms of leadership, rallying the team. It's important. The locker room I still think is good. I know there was some issues here with how Decker was treated, and I didn't like that from a Lions perspective on a personal level. And I hope that some of that gets fixed for sure. I thought they handled the Montgomery situation well. They communicated with him well. They didn't with Decker. Fine. But all of this needs to be rectified, and they're back to just playing football. And it starts with Dan Campbell and the guys' love and passion and belief in him. But the fact that he's kind of passing the torch to Jack Campbell on the defensive side for leadership and Penei Sewell on the offensive side, I think you're in good hands there. So that is, that I think will help this team moving forward. And again, Trev, you lost all those guys, but you're playing a fourth place schedule. Last year's schedule was a gauntlet. It was brutal.
Yeah, it sure
this year,
was.
There's no excuses. Yeah. There's winnable games there, very winnable games there.
You've mentioned Green Bay twice, Dees, and I just want to go over this with you, the FanDuel odds, because I find this kind of strange right now. To win the NFC North, the Lions are the odds-on favorite on FanDuel at plus 165. The Packers are second at plus 210. But when you go to the favorites to win the NFC, it's the Packers who are ahead of the Lions at plus 900, and the Lions are in second place in that regard. I'm just wondering how you think that shakes out. How you could be favored to win your division, but not favored over another team in your division to win the conference. I'm not sure what you make of that or what you think that the Packers have done. Obviously, they brought in Micah Parsons last year, and they're going to do some things in the draft, we know. But why? In your mind, why? And who do you like between the two as far as the long run goes?
That is weird. It's almost like FanDuel in Vegas thinks the Packers will be a wild card team and then do better playing as a wild card team in the playoffs than the Lions. I don't know. It's inexplicable, and sometimes that's how it goes. We love our friends at FanDuel, also a sponsor on Locked On Lions. But look, I like Green Bay's youth, and I don't love. They let most of their guys go. Quay Walker, their own free agents go. I have a big concern with the Lions offensive line, but I even have a bigger concern with Green Bay's. And I think they're going to double up in the draft and get O-linemen because they've lost some guys that can play there. Walker is gone. So I, to me, going in after the draft is done, you and I should talk again because I want to see who's
okay. We'll do that. We'll do that
for both.
You're
Green
penned
Bay
in. You are in ink. You're in after the draft. Continue with your thought.
Yeah, I mean that's I think that's important, but I also look. Jordan Love's got to take the next step. There are games you watch him, you go, man, he's special. That playoff game a couple of years ago when he went into Dallas and destroyed them. Then there's games he's played well against the Lions. Unfortunately, he likes playing at Ford Field, but there's an inconsistency there. If Jared Goff is protected, there's consistency there. Green Bay's defense is better than the Lions. I love their front. If Parsons is healthy, if Wyatt gets back healthy, very good. And I think that Brian Gutekunst, their GM, has done a really good job there. But for some odd reason, they just, you thought the Lions were snake bit last year with injuries and poor play. I mean, Green Bay should have beaten the Bears 3 times if they would catch an onside kick and make a field goal. Their special teams really let them down this past season. And obviously they made a change with Rich Bisaccia being out as their special teams coach. Maybe give a slight edge right now to the Packers. I do like that team, but I still think the Lions can win the division. Absolutely. And look, the Bears, I think everybody expects now for them to take a step back, but we know the kind of job Ben Johnson did last year. Pretty darn good.
They caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you see they're a team on the come. I will give them that, but I don't think anybody saw them doing what they did last year. Replicating that is going to be difficult now that nobody's going to see you. Everybody's going to see you coming. But where do you think they fall in the NFC North?
Right there.
Right in that third spot, or you think they're going to contend for the number 1 spot? Where do you see that?
I do. I think they'll contend for 1. I think 1 through 3 is going to be an absolute bloodbath. I do. And again, we talk about the Packers O-line, the Lions O-line. That Bears defensive front, I question. I think they can be blocked. And so, look, the Lions beat them twice. Goff had good time to throw in both games, including, and I know week 18 was a throwaway. The game really didn't matter to Detroit. I think the Bears were looking ahead of the playoffs, but still, Lions handled them pretty well in both of those games. And so that's what I want to see from the Bears. And again, look, the Bears are no longer sneaking up on anybody. The good, better, best routine was fun. But not every year can you take your shirt off and dance around in the locker room like Ben Johnson did. And they're playing a first
and chirp other coaches in your division. And that's nobody's going to forget that either.
No. So I think they'll have a little bit of a tougher time this year. But again, Caleb Williams really grew up in the second half of the season and is only going to get better. Losing DJ Moore, I know they kind of traded him because they wanted to dump some salary. I think hurts from a leadership perspective, but it's a good football team. I mean, you could throw these 3 teams all in a hat and pick one, and I don't think you'd go wrong right now.
I really want to get to the draft, and before we do that, I want to dedicate a lot of time to it. But I want to give a shout out to our friends at ZipRecruiter because, as you and I know, there are a lot of folks out there looking for jobs right now. I'm among them, and a lot of employers looking for employees. So, if you're hiring and you want a candidate who's passionate about your role, you can't get that insight from a resume unless you post your job on ZipRecruiter. And now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology finds qualified candidates quickly. And ZipRecruiter has a new feature that shows you the most interested qualified candidates first so that you can meet your people faster. Candidates tell you in their own words why they're interested in your job. Find candidates who really want your job on ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the very first day. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Good luck to everybody out there searching for employment and the employers looking for employees. And that'll be the Lions come draft day, looking for quality employees at number 17 in the first round. Where do you think they go? Everybody's thinking it's O-line. I don't know if there's an edge that's going to fall to them that might tempt them to do something different. But what do you think they do at 17? And who would be your guy in your dream scenario if he's still on the board?
Well, everybody's talked, Trevor, about Brad Holmes and how he's not going to change, right? He didn't change during free agency, and he's going to, stick with the plan. And he always says, we're taking the best available player. We're taking the player that is highest up on our board. We don't draft for need. But I'm sorry, brother. I mean, 17
this time around, you better.
Right. 17 in round 1, 50 in round 2 overall. I mean, to me, there's got to be an O lineman and an edge in there at some point. You don't have a third round pick. You got a couple of forwards, couple of five. I get all that. But really, you've got 2 in the top 50. I think it's 17 based on the board and what all these draft experts are saying. And I've talked to Jason Lockett for it. I'm talking to Dane Brugler. It sounds like the tackles and the O linemen are really, really heavily regarded in this draft. Mm-hmm. So to me, if Caden Proctor is there at 17 and you want your right tackle to go with Penei Sewell, who's going to be a left tackle, that's the guy. If he drops to 17, there's been a lot of smoke over the last couple of days, as you and I are recording here, about Vega Ioane from Penn State. And the fact that, yes, he's a guard, but Mauler, Destroyer, Dan Campbell, Lions grit type of guy that you put out there, and for 10 years you'll sit him at left guard and he'll be incredible. And that helps fix what was an issue last year, which was not physical enough up front. Now, with that being said, if you draft a left guard at 17, what about Christian Mahogany? And what about right tackle? Now, you are paying Larry Borum $6 million, and I think they put him out there today. If the season started today, it doesn't. So that's kind of where I'm at. If Monroe Freeling drops to 17, he had a very high RAS score. We know Holmes loves the relative athletic score. This
that's why he moved up and took Tesla last year.
Right. All very Freaky high athlete on the RAS board. I know you're a big RAS guy, Trevor. So with that being said, Freeling's there at 17. Do you take him? But he's kind of raw. All these guys I mentioned, or at least Freeling and Proctor, are SEC offensive linemen. Hello, that's Brad Holmes' dream. Right. Last year he took 2. Tate Ratledge and Miles Frazier were both SEC offensive linemen. So he's done it in the past. He's taken 3 Bama players in the first round already with Terrion, Jahmyr Gibbs, and J-Mo. So Proctor went to Bama. So there's certain things I'm looking at. But I think at the end of the day, to kind of go around the block to get next door to answer your question, I see tackle or O-lineman at 17. I do.
What about at 50? You mentioned at 50. Would you double down on an O-line, or you're thinking edge at that spot? And then who have you like there?
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of edge rushers that are day 1/day 2, maybe even day 3 guys that sit there at 50. I wouldn't be stunned. I'm not calling my shot. What if Brad
call your shot? Go for it.
What if Brad Trev is looking there at 50 and says, and it's like at 40 or 41, and Brad goes, let me take 50 in one of our number 4s and move up 9 spots and go get that edge or go get somebody that they really want. I think there's going to be a trade up at some point. I'm not so sure it's going to be in the first round because this isn't that strong of a draft, but I think there could be a trade up in round 2 where they take one of those extra picks they've got, like I said, 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6s, and package and move up. But yes, they need it. You look at the depth chart. The other day I was talking on my show about all the safeties that they have and all the corners that they have. They're really deep in the secondary right now. Now, are those guys going to be good? We'll see. Will Rakestraw be able to play? Is DJ Reed going to bounce back? Is Terrion going to be better? Mm-hmm. But they've got a crap ton of safeties. Izzy in free agency, who I like. And they re-signed Avonte Maddox. They've got guys, Dan Jackson, their 7th rounder last year that was out all year, they like. But they need edge rushers, man. They need another. They've got DJ Wanham and Matt Dery and Trevor Thompson, basically. So there's not a ton there.
And that Thompson guy's got a bad back, they tell me. So, yeah, you don't want him on the field.
So I think that while Brad is saying we're not just going to draft an edge because the media wants it and a couple of podcast hosts want it, but it's needed. You just look at the roster and you see on the depth chart, there's not a lot there. They need depth at that spot opposite of Aiden Hutchinson.
So if you're moving up in your scenario there, would it be a Malachi Lawrence or a Zion Young that's going to tempt you? Who are you moving up to get?
Yeah. Or what about the Michigan kids? Derek Moore, Barham, any of those guys. I think that somebody's going to, every year somebody slides in every sport. Go back to the NBA draft.
Absolutely.
John Wallace slid, or Paul Pierce, Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel. These guys sitting in the green room as the last one standing. Someone's going to fall and drop, or even drop Shador Sanders last year. He dropped 5 rounds. But I'm talking about a day 1 guy. We get done with day 1. There's 32 picks, And then Dave Burkett does a great job of this in the free press. He's always the first to have that list of, all right, here's who's available the next day. And the Lions have to wait a little bit, 17 picks or whatever it is, to go from 33 to 50. But somebody that's going to drop, like you said, and the Lions pounce on them, whether it's the Clemson kid at edge who may or may not stay in the first round. Keep an eye on something like that.
So with Brad Holmes, we talked a little bit about free agency, not the splash that a lot of people wanted or anticipated might happen given their needs. No trades made to really shore things up other than the David Montgomery trade, and you get an O-lineman. I don't know what you Scrugg is going to bring to the table, but you need some help there, a little depth there. So you got to pick with it, kind of understand, kind of don't. Like you say, his fit here seemed like it was something you'd want to hold on to. But just in your talks with Brad Holmes and just reading the tea leaves there, do you think that they're happy with what they've done to this point? Is it going as far as the internal plan is in their minds? Is it going the way they had wanted it to go?
I think so. I think they wanted to add depth along the offensive line. They've done that. You mentioned the Scruggs acquisition as part of the Montgomery trade and adding 2 picks. Ben Barch, who started some games for the Niners, was added too as a backup O-lineman. I think that they like the depth that they've added, and in the secondary especially. I don't think we talk enough about Roger McCreary and Christian Izien. I know they're on 1-year deals, but these aren't 31, 32, 33-year-old guys that are hanging on 1-year deals. These are prove-it players, prove-it deals for guys 25 and 26, I believe, who they think can really play. And so if you bring in look, last year Meek Robertson didn't play well. We all like him. He's a good player and he plays hard, and he was a total Lion for 2 years. But, look at the PFF grade. Look at the end of the season. He did not really perform all that well. Washington overpaid. I mean, paid him $8 million a year. So, you look up and you go, all right, you can get Christian Izien and a guy that can play both corner and safety. Same with McCreary, although he's more of a corner, and you get Rakestraw back. I think they've definitely upgraded in the secondary. Now, Reed's got to be healthy. Arnold's got to be on the field. Rakestraw's got to be healthy. Branch and Joseph have to be healthy. I think they feel like they did pretty well there. And I think they like Larry Borum a lot too, even though they won't commit to him just yet being a starter, but they gave him $6 million, which was surprising when that number came out a couple days after that deal. So I think they did all they could do in their minds. I think there's one more to go, whether it's Cam Jordan, I don't think Jadeveon Clowney is a Lions culture fit, but you never know. If Clowney's agent calls in June and says, look, he'll take a 1-year deal at the minimum. Lions have said it. Heck, Rod Wood is walking around town with a megaphone. 222 Rod Wood Drive is saying, we're broke. We don't have any cash. We can't spend. Oh, Max Crosby? No way. I mean, that was interesting. So, but I think a Cam Jordan, let's say the Saints and Jordan just don't agree to something. Wouldn't Cam Jordan pick up the phone and want to talk to his old buddy Dan Campbell?
Of course he would. In
New Orleans, and you get him for a decent amount of money. So I think there's another move left. I don't think free agency is completely done yet. How
important was the Avonte Maddox re-signing in your mind?
I like him. He played well. PFF had him as a top 5 Lion defender last year. Obviously, it was limited snaps, and he only started 3 games at the end of the year. But leader, veteran, Detroit guy, wants to be here, waited a while to sign until April. And I just think from a depth perspective, he didn't hurt the team as much as some of the other guys did toward the end of the year that had to be kind of thrown to the wolves. I thought Maddox was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought that was an important signing too. Again, just because you want to keep some continuity in there. Another guy who knows how to play professional football, knows his way around the field, and is certainly a fit as far as that goes right now. What other areas of concern do you have? Because I want to go back to one area I have, and then I want you to add your thought there. But back to Teddy Bridgewater in this backup quarterback spot. Is that really what you're going to go into the season with? Do you see another move coming there? And then my question to you, what are your concerns going forward?
Yeah, I was watching you and Glover a couple weeks ago. I was flipping around, and there you were on my TV. And I heard you saying that you weren't sold on Teddy coming back. I kind of disagree. I kind of like it.
Okay.
I don't think he's as long. We look at him and go, isn't he like 38? He's actually not. He's only 33.
It feels like he's 92. You've been hearing that name forever and ever and ever. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater. It's like Jameis Winston, you've heard this name forever and ever and ever. And there they are still chucking it.
Totally. But I think it helps the room it really helps Jamison Williams. JMO and Teddy Bridgewater are very close. And I think this past season, especially, and I think some of it was John Morton, JMO just wasn't himself. And I think there were games that he was fantastic, but then you know, the Cleveland game when he had the drops, and there were some games he was not existent. I think Bridgewater being back helps Jamison Williams. I just think they have a very good relationship and a mentor-mentee situation. Mm-hmm. And look, Jared Goff has stayed, knock on wood, upright now for the last 3 years. They really haven't had to utilize the backup quarterback spot. So, and this quarterback draft is abominable. It's awful. So if you're thinking, all right, the 6th round, we're going to take a QB, I don't see it. I don't see it. I think they're okay with where they are, and they'll go year to year with Bridgewater, and you know, look, they could always call Hendon Hooker back if they want. I'm joking.
You got to say you're joking these days. People take everything way too seriously in the world these days. I want to wrap things up with this. These just go back to the draft for 1 second, and back to the FanDuel odds. They've got Fernando Mendoza at minus 20,000 going number 1 on the board. And then it goes to number 2, Arvell Reese at minus 180. And the odds on pick for number 3, David Bailey at plus 260. Those are the top 3. Seem like locks right now. But do you see any surprises shaking up in the draft before we get to 17 and the Lions? Do you see any big shockers out there?
Man, you know, I if I'm the Browns at 6, and I know that the fans in Cleveland would love nothing more than to see a wide receiver to help. But to me, you know, teams like that just can't block anybody have got to take linemen. But if the Browns decide, nope, we're going to take, Carnell from Ohio State and put him at wide receiver, that helps the Lions. The more these teams pass on Proctor, Mauigoa, Fano, any of these offensive linemen, the better the chance, Freeling, the better chance the Lions are going to have to get one of them at 17. So that's something to keep an eye on, is if these teams, look, if somebody, and I think this would be ridiculous, if someone takes Ty Simpson, the quarterback from Bama, early, that's great for the Lions. Like, all right, somebody, why?
Another one off
to
the
me,
board.
it's Mendoza, and then there's a massive gap between Mendoza and Simpson. But hey, if somebody moves up, you know, the Jets, Browns, what if the Browns decided, you know, we're going to shock the world and take another quarterback? It wouldn't surprise me. That would be the Brownsing again. That opens up a spot. So keep an eye on that. But I think most of the names that you see at the top of the draft, Caleb Downs, you mentioned Reese, the Ohio State guys, Mauigoa, I think those are the guys that you expect to go early that the Lions wouldn't have a shot at, but you never know. But I think at 17, I think they're going to be in decent shape to get somebody pretty good.
So if anybody's going rogue, it'll be the Browns. We'll look for that. If it doesn't make sense, it makes Cleveland.
Browns and Jets always surprise. Remember, the Jets have 2 first rounders because of the trade last year with the Colts. So wouldn't surprise me either if New York does something wacky. And look, if they take Ty Simpson, I think, what are they at 9 or something? Fine. Go for it, please. That would open up a spot for somebody that the Lions might want. So, and by the way, and I want to say this, and I know you're going to get mad at me, but can we get more of Trevor Thompson on these Red Wing broadcasts? I absolutely loved seeing you the other night, Wings and Jackets. I'm watching. They're like, let's throw it back. Ken Daniels with the magic words. Let's throw it back to Trevor Thompson and Chris Osgood. I'm like, yes, finally, my guy back on where he belongs, covering hockey. So
I really do appreciate that. I really, really do. But I'll tell you what, I wish we were doing some playoff hockey. That would be all the city wants, all that all of us want.
Totally.
But it looks like we're going to be waiting another year for that. But I really do appreciate the support, Deez. I really do appreciate the friendship over the years, the support. And like I said earlier in the show, you being the first one in the city to have me on a year ago when I got on Believe in Lions. I really do appreciate you taking the time here. And I'm going to hold you to it to come back with us after the draft. It's going to be an exciting draft. It's going to be a lot to talk about afterwards and see what the Lions do. So I'm going to have you back after that, if you will, sir. Yeah, we'll get you back on Locked On Lions as well, Trev. Get your thoughts on the draft, and should be fun. Lions have 9 picks, and I don't think they're going to make all 9. I think, like we talked about, some sort of a package to move up. It's kind of what Brad Holmes does. Look, he's been a very good drafter. It's almost a great. I think he's a great talent evaluator, in my opinion. He is. And the last 2 years have been a little shaky, not the best, but sometimes you need to judge drafts 2-3 years later, and. Still, I'm a big Tate Ratledge fan. I think that some of these guys that he's taken, Rakestraw, if he gets healthy, are going to be pretty good.
But I don't blame the fans for being a little bit
Yeah.
angry right now. Last year was not what anybody expected, and they got beat up pretty good. That was a surprise to watch them get pushed around. I like what Dan Campbell said at the league meetings. We got to get back to being tough and playing with an edge and grit. And I think when you finish in last place, like the Lions did this past year, at least tied with Minnesota, they're going to put that up on the bulletin board, and that should motivate the guys, I think.
Yeah. And Teschla flashed last year. I think he's going to have more of an opportunity this year, and we'll see what they've got in an athlete like that on the field with that size and those hands. That'll be fun to see with this team going forward. Matt Dery, Locked on Lions daily podcast. Tune him in for all the information. He'll be back with us on Believe in Lions after the draft to break all that down. Matt, really do appreciate the time. Everybody out there, please do like, please do subscribe, and please do share and enjoy. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Believe in Lions. It's brought to you by FanDuel, and our thanks to Matt Dery on the way out. We'll see all of you soon.